You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 240 of Teach Better Talk. And in Jeff's language, that was, hey guys, 240 is what he told me. My name is Ray Hewart. I am with my very, very irritating co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Gargis. And we are getting started with an epic episode. Jeff, this was a great topic, great episode. And we're about to blab on before we get to our guest. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so stick around through this nonsense because we do give away a book later on the episode.
We do.
And it's a very powerful episode. I really love everything that he's doing. And I hope that our audience and the Teach Better family community will come together and help him get his book out more, get his message out more, because it needs to be heard.
In complete honesty, guys, I know we get to have a lot of people on the podcast, but this was a book that as he talked about it, I'm like, okay, I need to go buy that book. I'm very interested in this idea. So I was very appreciative that you shared so much on this podcast because I feel like it sparked enough that now I'm excited and confident that when I buy the book, there's more in there.
So I want to make sure that we preface that you cannot win it, Ray.
Why can I never win? It's not fair.
Because you can't. You're the host of the podcast. You don't get... I'm sorry. You're the co-host of the podcast. You don't get to win the book.
I'm sorry. You said it right the first time. You're confused.
Anywho,
yeah,
it's just not the way it goes. Anyway, speaking of podcasting, can we talk about something that's out there that a lot of our listeners may not be aware of?
Yeah, and I really didn't know what this was, and I actually learned all about it thanks to Joshua Stamper, and I'm game. I'm a fan. Mm-hmm.
So shout out to Joshua Stamper for educating Ray.
Ooh, Joshua Stamper educates me all the time, guys.
So if you don't know Joshua, _Stamper. Josh is he's the leader of our podcast network. He manages our podcast network, which we now have 13, 14, 15. I don't know how many podcasts we have.
15,
I feel like we're bringing on more new ones every time. So anyway, we have that over at teachbetter.com/podcast, or teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. That takes you there too. But a lot of great podcasts on there. It's growing. It's going to grow a lot this year. That's just one thing that we've laid out, and it's going to happen, and Josh is going to make that happen. But one thing Josh did is created a list on Twitter. And if you're not familiar with how Twitter lists work, lists are sort of...
by, I was not.
So in your Twitter profile, in your account, you can create lists. And you can create a public list, which you can share out to the world for other people to see how it's, or you can create a personal one just for yourself. Essentially, it's just you're curating specific feeds for yourself. So when you go onto Twitter, you have your home feed. It's filled with anyone and everyone you follow, people tagging you, people tagging other people, all that kind of stuff. List, you can pick people very specific. So some people might do it very specific to us, maybe educators that talk on very specific topics like standards-based grading. So this is my SBG list. Or this is my, personal branding list, or this is my super funny comedy list, whatever it might be. We now, Josh created a Teach Better Talk podcast network list. So it's all the podcasts that are on our network in one list. And so it's a really cool tool. If you want to go follow and you want to get connected with them, it's a super easy way to go connect with them. You can subscribe to the list. So that'll allow you to see it, but you can also pop in and just see what's going on with the network, or it just allows you, it's a really easy way to just easily go and get connected with all the podcasts on our network.
So I just want you to know on the record, that was the stinking best explanation of that process, because I talked about this for about an hour with Becky Thal, and we barely got to the explanation that you just provided. This makes so much more sense, guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, I just had one of those aha moments, and that is awesome because now on your Twitter account, you can follow a ton of different people like educators, comedians, celebrities. But when you go to your list, if you're really diligent about sorting people as you connect with them, you can see only education information or only celebrity gossip. I mean, that to me, I have so many people asking me how they curate their news feeds. And my response is usually, oh, guys, just unfollow people like crazy. If they're creating a negative environment, if you're not learning the way that you want, you shouldn't be following them. But there is a reality to like being able to curate your Twitter to kind of see what you want to see in that time, in that moment. My mind's blown, y'all. I think you should come join the pack and go follow this list.
Now you can definitely curate it and adjust what you see by liking, retweeting, stuff like that's going to do that. But this is like, so when you go to your profile, you can go on list and you can just have all your different lists. And again, you can set them as private if you don't want people to know. And if you want public, if you just have a public list and you add someone to it, they are going to get notified that they were added to your list. It's just something to keep in mind. Not that anyone would care, but it really allows you to go in and do it. It's a great way if you're also someone who likes to reshare a lot of stuff. If you like to, if you use Buffer or something like that, you like to fill up, utilize in a list, gives you easy access to it. Anyway, if you want to get that, yes.
Can I just
rating,
preface?
Right? Just for those of you listening, I'm on camera with Ray. She's like, her fingers going like, I have a question. Don't stop talking. I got to talk. What's up?
Okay, so aside from all that, which by the way, still mind blown, I really... Jeff's now waving his hands obnoxiously, just so y'all know. I do really like, though, because our podcast network, if you go to the Teach Better Podcast Network, you can see all the podcasters, but you'd have to go in and like manually follow all of them on Twitter. This list puts them all in one spot, so you can just click follow like however many times you need to get that whole list. And so I really like it for the ease of that. These are all people that we vetted. We know each and every one of them personally. They're all speaking not only from an educational lens, but they're also all speaking with the Teach Better mindset. And we really want to provide you guys with not only podcasts to listen to, but connections to educators that we really believe are doing outstanding work in their field in a variety of topics. So I think it's cool as just an easy way to follow awesome people to add to your bubble.
Yep. So I agree 100%. That's a good way to wrap it up. Go to teachbetter.com/podcast Twitter. That will get you to that list. Or if you want, just go find Joshua _Stamper over on Twitter. And if you go to his profile and click the little 3-button menu, you can find list and go find it there. But a lot easier, just go teachbetter.com/podcast Twitter. And you can get all that. So
wow, Jeff, that's such an easy website to remember. How in the world did you come up with that? teachbetter.com/podcast Twitter. So original.
I'm pretty sure we came up with it just before we started this live video, this recording. So
sorry, we did. Yeah, sorry.
A little behind the scenes look into the genius of Jeff and Ray. Like what's easier to remember, podcast Twitter or Twitter podcast? Let's do podcast Twitter. There you go. And that's how it's done. I still think
podcast Twitter was the way to go, y'all. I'm just saying.
So teachbetter.com/podcast Twitter. Let's talk about this podcast, this guest. Seriously, really exciting. So Craig Randall he's the author of Trust-Based Observations, which just came out last month or a couple months ago. But he's been a counselor, a coach, a teacher, a principal, assistant principal at schools, both in the United States and around the world too. And he's got a really cool, I just love his outlook on what observations are supposed to be. I actually sort of say at the beginning, but like so often I just want to be like, yeah, it's crazy that Craig even has to like tell anyone this because this is what it should do. Like it doesn't make any sense the way it is right now. And I think you're going to get it the entire episode through. Like teachers, admins, everyone, you're going to resonate with everything he's saying so much. So I hope you reach out and connect. Ray, I know you're a fan. You literally said it in the middle of the episode. Anything else we need to listen for specifically that jumped out for you? Anything like that?
I mean, there's a lot to listen for, but to save all of you the long shenanigans of me, I just want you to try and get the book giveaway because I think that has so many tips and tricks. And not to sound like cheesy, but like read it yourself. But like this would be a really good book to like pass on. Like pass this to your assistant principal, pass this to your principal, give this to your director of instruction. Like it's okay to share resources and share books. This would be one that I not only want all of you to enjoy, but like this is a great one to give to somebody else. This is a great way to, I don't know, build trust.
Yeah, so go buy yourself a copy and then buy like 3 other copies too. Let's take care of Craig.
Ooh, if you're buying copies, get me one.
Someone to Ray. All right, with that, let's get an episode 240 with Craig Randall. Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Don't worry, I'm going to get you right back into the episode, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of something really awesome that we have starting very soon in our private Facebook group. And that is a brand new monthly live series called Best Intentions, led by the one and only Hans Apple. Best Intentions is a cutting-edge learning pathway designed to help educators explore self-development and the pursuit of living our most intentional, authentic lives in and out of the classroom. In these live monthly conversation style interviews with world-renowned experts, authors, and speakers, we're going to be tackling themes like mental health, wellness, leadership, social emotional learning, and culture through the lens of purpose. This is exclusive to our Teach Better Team private Facebook group. That Facebook group is 100% free. You just go to teachbettergroup.com or search Teach Better Team on Facebook and you'll find it there as well. So make sure you jump over there and join the group. Everything starts January 31st, but you don't need to wait till then to get in the group. Get in the group today so you're ready for it when we kick off this brand new exclusive live series, Best Intentions. All right, let's get back to the episode. All right, we are here and we're chatting with Craig Randall. And Craig, awesome to have you on the podcast. Man, super excited to dive in and learn more about you and everything you have going on. Before we get too far into the questions, man, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. Had a productive day and it's raining, but other than that, I'm doing well.
Productive days are always a good feeling. I had a productive day too. So this is like a great feeling at the end of the day to be like, hey, I accomplished a bunch. You know, Craig,
Ray, don't you always have productive days?
You know what? I wish I could say yes, but the reality is no, guys, I don't. Yesterday, Sunday, not productive at all. You know, Craig, as we get to this episode, I know we have a lot we're going to talk about. This is actually a topic that we're going to get into. I'm really, really excited to pick your brain on. But before we get into all that, I do want the listeners to get to know you a little bit, the work you do in education. So would you mind kind of answering that age-old question of what you do?
Yeah. I think I'm going to answer it for somebody that's not in education. So I would tell them that, I was a principal and then I wrote a book called Trust-Based Observations. And then you kind of gauge someone's response. And if you see there's interest, then you'll say, and the reason is because the way we do observations right now are not really improving teaching and learning. And actually the research says as soon as we start to grade teachers' pedagogy, which is what happens, a principal goes into a teacher's room and they watch them for an hour with their laptop and they grade them on sometimes over 60 different things. And then the teacher has to wait, sometimes for days, for the principal to come back and give them ratings on all those things, tell them what they did. Maybe if you're lucky, ask them what they thought of the lesson. Maybe if you're lucky, share some things that they thought they did well, and then tell them a bunch of things they should get better at. And so since that doesn't work, and I didn't really, I knew it didn't work, but I didn't know the research at the time, I created a model that basically focuses on getting in frequently for short visits where we ask the teachers afterwards what they thought of their teaching, and we share their strengths, and we really work hard to build trusting relationships with them. And then when we do that, we find that they take risks, and when they take risks, voila, they start to get better at what they do.
So when you have a good relationship with someone and you don't just tell them all the things they're doing wrong, they actually do better. Go figure. It's crazy that we had to adjust this, but I really want to get into the reason why.
Rocket science.
So talk to me about what led you to the book. You said you wrote the book and now you do all this, but obviously there was something that sparked the book and you were in that role where you were observing teachers, I believe. What really spawned you on to say, you know what, I need to dig into this. I need to write this book. I need to figure this out. I need to help others to do this better.
I would say before I was a principal or assistant principal, I was just frustrated with the process. I thought it was infrequent. I went through a period where I wasn't observed for 2 years, which is more common than you might think. And when I would talk to other people about it, they would say, well, yeah, but that's just the way it is. And then I met my mentor when I started my principal certification program. And he just said, you got to be in classes every day. You got to be having reflective conversations with them. You have to support them. You have to build trust with them, and you have to help them get better. And the light bulb went off for me because he was the first person that I'd heard say that. And then I got lucky and I had my first assistant principal job with a principal who was at the end of his career and was really excited to have somebody that was excited about doing something. And I would just tell him the things I wanted to do. And he said, well, let's do it. And he started doing it with me too. And I had really immediate success where teachers were saying, oh my gosh, in 20 some years of teaching, no one's ever asked me what I thought about teaching. And then having their strengths shared, they'd say, nobody ever tells me what I'm good at. I mean, people have been teaching for a really long time. And I knew I was onto something, although I didn't really know I was onto anything that would ever lead to a book or anything like that.
So then how did the book come around? How did that process go? were you writing it and then, you got connected with the publishing? Did you self-publish? How did that process go?
So, we worked at international schools for a number of years, and we came home. And one of the nice things about international schools is you can save a little money. So we had enough money saved up, and I have a really amazing, tolerant, supportive wife who just said, yeah, why don't we can make this work for a couple of years. And so I actually would go to a coffee shop every day and write for 5 or 6 hours. And then at a certain point along the way, I started submitting to publishers, and heard back really early on with a publisher that said, I'm willing to talk to you, but if you tell the other publishers you're not going to work with them. And it was a little scary, but I trusted her. And then she offered me a contract. One kind of funny thing, though, was I spent a lot of time doing the research of history of observations, and I had about, 40 single space pages of that. And they said, but we don't want to use that. So it was kind of funny with all that time and effort. And they just tossed that part aside, but I trusted them. So, and then it came out in September.
Well, congratulations. That's a process. I love that journey. So I want to dive into, just one of our questions that we always ask here. That it's one of my favorite questions. This is talking about failure and overcoming failure. Can you share a story with us about a time in your life that you've had a failure that you've had to overcome? Sort of take us there with you. What happened? How did you overcome that? And what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And like most people, I still make most of my mistakes and learn the hard way. And this is a mistake that I think I got lucky that I made a mistake, but somehow salvaged it before I completely ruined it. And so it was my first year as an actual principal after a couple of years an assistant principal. And I had my ideas about what education should be and what teaching should be. And I'm a guy that just hates rows, and they just drive me crazy. And so there was a teacher, and he was very traditional, and he was an IB biology teacher, and he was lecture, and they were in rows, and I was really frustrated with that because it didn't fit my ideal of what good teaching was. And so I was going to sit down with him and have a conversation with him about things that I thought he ought to do, or something he ought to do to get better, probably some cooperative learning. And something, though, so that was my mistake, was thinking that. And something held me back, and I don't know what it was, divine intervention. I have no idea what it was, but something held me back. And in the time that I was waiting to offer him advice on how to get better, I started looking at his old IB scores, and he was year in and year out over 1.25 points above world average, which, if you realize IB scores, that's insanely high. And so I thought, oh my gosh. And then I thought, I need to go in and watch this guy again. And we cycle regularly with trust-based observations. You're always cycling through and seeing teachers. And I started just thinking, I need to have a different lens here. And I started to see that he was relentless. He had really, really high bar for each student. He had every student for the course goals. He made them carry a hard copy of all the course goals. And every time they would go over a new goal, learning target, he would make them pull out the copy of that. He would make them highlight the date that was, so then they could go and refer to their notes later when they're preparing for the IB exams. He had a really dry sense of humor. I also realized that it was a science class, and so he was conveying some information definitely through the traditional lecture model, but it was a lab class, so the kids were in labs a whole bunch, and he was great interacting with the kids in labs. And he just had this accountability thing where he would not let the kids do anything other than top-notch work, and he would make these jokes about, what do you want to go to foosball university? And then I realized that I need to tap into this guy. And so then I went to him and I said, Mark, I would really like you to be able to put on a professional development session on what you're doing for the other teachers. And he said, I'm a dinosaur. What do you want me to do? And I kept after him. And after about 6 months, at the beginning of the next year, he did, and he called it Jurassic 101. He titled it, which I thought was pretty funny. And he gave this amazing 45-minute presentation on really relentlessness and a high bar. And we had a staff of about 45, and between him and me afterwards, about 6 of the younger teachers came up to us and said, thank you so much. I feel like I have permission now to to be more strict with my kids and demand more from them. And I just think, can you imagine if I had told him right away that I thought he ought to get better at these things? Like what he would have done, would he have left the school, what he would have told other teachers, because other teachers knew how well he scored on that, on his tests year in and year out. And it really made me realize that there are so many different ways that someone can be an amazing teacher, from ways that I still admit I struggle with a little bit, that you might consider traditional, to really more progressive ways. And so anyway, that was my failure that I luckily saved myself, and I learned some really, really good lessons from.
Yeah, what a powerful lesson to kind of take that moment to step back and evaluate the situation, and then you pulled that lesson out of it, and this idea, and then you went and just, amplified his voice and brought that value that was just sitting right there in your school to other teachers there, and just, I love that story. Let's flip it around. Let's talk about a successful moment. This can be something big or something small, but take us there with you. What happened? Why was it a successful moment for you? And then what did you take away from that experience?
Okay. So I go back to my very first year as an assistant principal. And so the model is like just 12, 20-minute observations per week, just continuously cycle through. And you always start the reflective conversations, which are always the next day, with what were you doing to help students learn? And if you had it to do over again, what, if anything, might you do differently? And then we would always share strengths. And so at first, I didn't give feedback for a couple of reasons. One, I just felt like it was really arrogant of me to give somebody feedback after seeing them once or twice or three times, because what if I told them to get better at something that they were really good at? I just didn't see them, because we see them, maybe 1% of the time if we're lucky. And then two, part of it was probably my wanting to be liked as the new guy. And so what I started to realize happened was, after about 3 visits, which is like maybe November, teachers started to say, well, yeah, but what can I get better at? And so one of the other great things about being in classes so much is you start to really see who's really excellent at what. And so I had one teacher he was actually really into Kagan, but he'd also gone to the flipped classroom model. And I had this other teacher that asked me what she could get better at. And she was a math teacher. And in my experience, math teachers, no offense, Ray, stereotypically, I know you're not this, tend to be the most traditional in the way they teach. And so she would be up at the board doing a problem, and then they'd go over and do the next problem. And then the last 10 minutes, they all work on their problems, and the teacher works her way around the room. That was her model. But she was great with kids. They loved her. Her content knowledge was everything. Nothing was wrong with any of that. And so when she asked, I said, well, we have this other teacher who's a science teacher who does this. Do you want me to set up something with him? And so we did. And she immediately started flipping her classroom, and what used to be her so-called lectures and problem solving, she started doing as screencasts. And then she also started then using the class time to really just do all this cooperative math solving, and the kids are working with each other, and they were so much more engaged, and they were loving math. And so it was this really, really exciting experience to have this teacher make this really dramatic change in their practice. But it also, on a bigger level, it made me, for the first time, really realize that by focusing on strengths, by asking teachers what they were doing, asking them about their teaching, and then just by waiting, trust was being built. And so really that success was really the first time that I really, really realized there's something here.
You are so spot on in so many ways. I love your approach. That was a awesome success story, even though I know you maybe not that math teachers, but I won't lie to you, Craig, I kind of see the same thing. When we work with educators around the country, it's absolutely a commonality. And while I think a lot of us are striving to be better, I think your approach in building trust to make it a team effort is absolutely something that I, as a classroom teacher, would love leadership to continue to do across the world. So I love your approach.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So I have to know, clearly you're very energized by this topic. Like, this is clearly something that fuels your fire. And, question 4 always has to do with what's keeping you excited. I really would love to hear more either on this idea, or maybe there's something else as well that's really keeping you excited about the world education right now and the work you're specifically doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say I'm completely not excited about the way observations work right now. They don't work. The Gates Foundation, $200 million, 7 years on their measures of effective teaching, which was really a way to develop a more robust teacher evaluation process to improve teaching and learning. And the final report came out in 2018, and there's no improvement. So it tells us what's happening isn't working. And so, yes, I'm a one-trick pony with this stuff. I am so passionate about it because I know it works. I've seen it work. I'll tell you, I was recently at a school in December in Mississippi, rural Mississippi. It was so rural that I had to stay 40 minutes away because that was the closest Airbnb from where the town is. And so I was there, and then doing a week of training with a teacher that would have described, a principal that would have described herself as a total type A personality. And she had just finished her first year as a principal the year before. And she did exactly what it told her to do. And she gave teachers ratings, and she'd followed, unfortunately, a principal who for 26 years had not observed. So she follows that. They've got all this autonomy. She tries to do the right thing. She gives a teacher a 3 on something, which to her is a good score. And the teacher comes in crying the next day, like just heartbroken that she'd received a 3 when she thought she deserved a 4. And that was really when the light bulb came on for her that something about the current models really wasn't working. And so she reached out to me, and then we came out and worked together. And she's so type A, and she was reluctant at first and like, but what about all the things they have to get better at? And I said, but you're playing the long game. I mean, they've been things that you want them to get better at. It's not like those didn't exist before. So what's the big deal if we wait 3 or 4 or 5 months before we start to offer a suggestion? And then she started to work with me, and we practiced over and over and over with teachers. And the amazing thing was, by Wednesday, teachers were emailing her, because you know how teachers talk, right? Everybody hears, everybody wants to know what's going on, who's the strange person in the building. And they're emailing her and they're saying, can you observe me? Can you observe me? And so to me, that just speaks to the power that, like, it's her very first week doing this, and I'm doing it with her, but she's doing a great job. And 3 days in, people that are going, don't observe me, are now asking to be observed. And I just think that speaks to the power of working to build a trusting relationship with teachers. I'll tell you, the ultimate goal really is for a teacher to feel confident enough to know with certainty that I or any principal can come into the classroom, watch them trying something new that completely bombs, yet feel totally confident that the next day during the reflective conversation, they're going to receive a congratulatory fist bump for taking risks. And when that happens, teachers will improve because they know it's safe to take risks. And if you take risks, you will improve. It's just that simple.
Craig, there's so many things I want to touch on related to this. One is the extreme connection between the work you do and the mindset we preach. This idea of supporting one another, trying new things, truly being reflective. I am such an advocate for the work that you do because I truly, truly believe that if we continue to support teachers and build that trust, then we can make massive jumps quickly in education. And you are doing incredible work in that space. On the flip side, I really, really appreciate your focus on partnering with educators. And I can only imagine that mindset of a partnership, partnering with these educational leaders, is something you're going to take into question 5, because question 5 is always a question about advice. And I know this is super tricky because I can only believe that there are so many pieces of advice that you could offer every single listener that we have. But if you had one piece of advice that you wanted to leave teachers with, what would be the piece of advice you would start with?
Oh, man. It's so hard because so many people are in an environment where they're not living what we're talking about. And so it's incredibly difficult when you're living in that environment to feel safe to take risks and grow. So I'm just going to tell you that I realize there's no panacea out there. Absolutely. But if there was one thing that I could recommend that every teacher do that I think would do more to support the growth of their practice than any other, it's finding a way to get themselves to the 5-day Kagan cooperative learning structures. training, because it helps them in so many ways with their students and teachers. It helps them with the engagement. It helps them with social emotional learning with students. There's so much teaching others, which is such a high form of retention. It's such an amazing way for them to be able to formatively assess students, to be able to see what they've got so they know what to tweak. It helps them to be able to allow students to have that reflection and processing time. So just think about brain science, how things will float away after, 5 to 10 minutes if we don't stop and give them time to do that. And so that's the one thing that I think I would say is if I was giving advice to a teacher, go to that.
That's some good advice. I'm kind of soaking that all in. We're going to get into the 6 questions with 15 seconds or less to answer each one. But before we do that, Craig, you're being super awesome and want to give away a copy of your book, Trust-Based Observation. So if you want to grab a free copy of the book, you can head over to Twitter.
An autographed copy.
An autographed copy, by the way, not just any copy. An autographed copy. Thank you for adding that, sir. We're going to go over on Twitter. You need to do a shout out. We just want you to just shout out an educator, whether it's a leader, a colleague, whoever it might be, that has built a trusting relationship with you. And it allows you to feel like you can take risk. So Craig, we're going to do that. Craig, shout out your Twitter handle.
At Trust-Based Craig.
Trust-Based Craig, and then make sure, obviously, at Teach Better Team and #Teach Better, #Teach Better Talk. Get that. We're going to pick someone randomly, and Craig's going to send you an autographed copy. Awesome.
That's
I love
right.
it. Appreciate you doing that, sir. All right, let's keep this going. We're going to do the next 6 questions. Your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You good to go?
Okay. Yep.
All right, what is one EdTech tool you cannot live without?
All right, I got to give to Google Docs because of the shareability, and then Kindle because when you're writing and researching, it's so much easier to electronically do it, and it automatically provides the citation too.
Give us a book you're reading right now.
I am reading Permanent Record by Edward Snowden, which is frightening, and I have to give a recommendation for every teacher, The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer, because he writes so many things that I think every teacher feels and wonders and fears in a way where you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's not just me.
Who do you need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today?
I love Diane Ravitch, at Diane Ravitch. She's just such a powerful voice in education, and she is not afraid to ruffle feathers in her defense and support of public education and teachers.
What's a good YouTube channel, website, or podcast that educators should check out?
That's so hard because there's so many. And I will say it was really fun to drink a beer on the Beer EDU podcast while I was doing that. But there's one, so I'm going to say 2. There's one, it's not totally education, No Stupid Questions by Stephen Dubner and Angela Duckworth, but it's really good. And then there's one called Teacher by the Australian Teacher magazine, which is really good because they go into all this research stuff every couple of weeks too.
Give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
Okay, so I have to change this to principles. So I would say, sorry,
I'm all right with that. I'm okay.
Okay, so start observing and having reflective conversations with teachers every day. Ask them reflective questions. Share the strengths you notice. Listen to them. Empathize. And just work to build trust with them so they know it's safe to take risks. And don't rate their pedagogy.
And finally, was the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Okay, so this is a book by Dean Smith, who used to be Michael Jordan's college basketball coach. And he said something that resonated so deeply with me. He said, I learned a heck of a lot more about how to be a good basketball coach from all the non-examples than I did from all the examples. And I just think it's so true in life. We can see things and go, oh my God, I'm never doing that. And that can be really, really powerful in informing good practice.
Oh, so good. I like that. And I think every educator can take that on as a goal. Like for everything you see that doesn't model what you want for yourself in your future, that's a good learning opportunity. So good. Craig, I'm a fan. I really like the work you do. This was like super beneficial to our listeners, and I cannot wait for them to connect with you. So I honestly, I would love for you to share like your website, maybe your Twitter handle, your book, something that they can do to continue to have conversations around this really, really important topic.
Yeah. So my website is www.trustbase.com. My handle, Twitter, is at TrustBaseCraig. They can email me, Craig@trustbase.com, or get me on LinkedIn, and they can go to Amazon and buy the book.
And you can find all the links, all the resources, everything we talked about in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as the really important links for connecting with Craig and keeping this conversation going. So head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and review, we'd really, really appreciate that as well. Let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and connect with these amazing educators, and just share this podcast with them. Craig, I am 100% with Ray. I am a fan. I love the work you're doing. It's so important. And I just really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of that work with us. I appreciate you taking some time and hanging out with us. Thank you.
I'll just say I'm a fan of you guys and the work you guys are doing too, because I think it's making a difference. So thanks so much for having me on. I'm really grateful.
I appreciate that a whole lot. And until next time, let's get out there. Let's teach better.